Hello everyone, welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're all good and well, and happy Halloween as well, as we are about to embark on Halloween special video as I attempt to put and rank all these 10 horror films into different tiers. If you're not familiar with the tier list format, everything that goes into the top tier are usually the best of the bunch, or at least it's always subjective, so this is always my opinion. These will be my favourites, therefore, that go into the tier which I've called the Screamer tier to be on theme with Halloween. The next tier down, which is going to be the films I rate as really good films, and they'll go into a treat tier. Then the next films I regard as basically decent or okay will go into the spooky tier. The films I would call, kind of disappointing but not too bad will go into the tier I've called no costume. You always get those people that turn up to Halloween parties without costumes. That's why I've kind of called that that's the disappointing tier. I have to confess, I've turned up to Halloween parties without costume. Very, very bad. Next down, we have my least favourite films, which will go into the Rotten Pumpkin tier. So there you go. And these are all pretty recent films, actually. These are all the oldest films here, I think, are Shallows and the first Terrifier film from 2016. Otherwise, you've got some very recent ones, including the latest Terrifier film, the much talked about Terrifier 2, which I will be talking a bit about when we get to that particular film. So let's kick off this tier list with Ready or Not from 2019. This stars Samara Weaving, was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. This is essentially a film about a girl that marries into a very rich family who she quickly realises have some very strange ways, and they have a particular tradition which she has to take part in as a new member of the family, where she pulls a card and basically whatever that card says, whatever game that card says, she has to partake in that as part of the family tradition. Of course, there's a horror spin on this. This is a deadly game. This is a hide and seek game where essentially the family have to kill Samara Weaving's character. I think she was called Grace. They have to kill Grace in order to survive. Otherwise they all basically die, or she has to kill them in order to survive. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse kind of horror comedy film. Lots of great scenes, lots of great funny moments in it, great kills. I'm going to call this one a treat. Tempted to put it in Screamer as well, but I think I'm going to save the Screamer that's the ones that I would love to rewatch again and again. I wouldn't mind rewatching Ready or Not, but it's not a film I necessarily be compelled to sort of immediately kind of rewatch super soon. But it was very funny, it was good fun. I would say it was good fun. Well performed by all the cast for sure. Next up, we have Choose or Die from this year, a Netflix release. This kind of was a strange film that I thought didn't sort of make best use of the concept, the kind of tech horror concept that was at play here, with the characters kind of, getting lost in this kind of 80s retro video game where, have to make very difficult choices, or this girl has to make very, very difficult choices throughout the film. I thought actually the lead performance of the girl playing the main character was pretty good, but there were a lot of the dialogue and the scripts. There wasn't enough in terms of the story to really compel me to want to sort of sit through the entire film. I struggled with getting through this film. One very, very good scene with, I think, where the girl's mother is kind of trapped inside this video game where there's this rat sort of on the loose. And that was sort of interesting, watching the kind of a horror scene as a video game. I quite liked that concept, but as I say, the film didn't make enough use of that for me. So unfortunately, Choose or Die is going into Rotten Pumpkin tier. If you're a fan of this film, all the power to you. But for me, it's one of my least favourite films on this list, so it's going to go into Rotten Pumpkin. And next up, we have 2016's Terrifier, a film which it's talked about perhaps for one particular scene, which was particularly graphic and shocking. I think, though, that this film, to be fair, is good as a sort of suspenseful slasher film for the most part. Yes, it has shocking, really horrifically gory graphic scenes in it, one in particular, as I say, but it's pretty good as a slasher film. But where I have trouble with this film is, I think, I'm about to talk about the sequel. As compared to the sequel, it didn't do as well at keeping me, I think, on the edge of my seat throughout the entire thing. For the first half, it definitely did. But the second half of the film, I struggled with a bit more. Didn't always think the performances were quite as good in this film as they are in the film I'm about to talk about, Terrifier 2. And I felt that, Art the Clown is an incredible antagonist. And for me, I would go as far as to say this is the modern day Freddy Krueger. This is the 2020s or 2010s modern day version of Freddy Krueger. And he is fantastically acted. This silent clown who, lives up to the name of Terrifier. He's absolutely terrifying. He plays on people's vulnerabilities. He, gradually works out ways of breaking them down and does them in the way that's sort of creepy, but very manipulative and just really brutal ways. And the first Terrifier film, though, I didn't think was that great, but it did, for the first half of the film at least, have me, definitely on the edge of my seat right up until that absolutely shocking scene that comes halfway through. Not for the faint-hearted. If you do not like gore, blood, or any of that thing. In fact, if you're watching this video and you're into horror, I might find that interesting that you're not into, you can't watch blood stuff, anything with blood in it. But yeah, not for the faint-hearted. This is a real stomach churner, and one scene which is so graphic and explicit, I would not suggest, if you are squeamish, stay away from the Terrifier films. Now that brings us on nicely, segues on to Terrifier 2. I loved this film. I watched this just yesterday. One of the best slasher films I personally think I've seen in years. I was, I'm conscious I haven't seen, I think, the sort of recent Halloween trilogy that there's been. And, that may be surprising, but I need to still watch. I think I need to watch Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends still. But I honestly think this was a great slasher film. I mean, yes, it was gruesome. It was super gory and grotesque, horrible, horrible scenes again. But tell you what, the characters in this film are really good. I loved the performance of Lauren Rivera as Sienna. I thought she was terrific from the start of the film to the end, and just thought she almost helped as well as I thought Art the Clown and his, the amazing performance of David Howard Thornton. I think I've got his name right. He was brilliant too. And I thought those two in particular sort of helps the film's atmosphere, because I thought their performances were really, really strong. And, the clown, the performer that plays the clown, he is just remarkable with all his movements without even saying a word or even really making a sound a lot of the time. He is just incredible. This slasher film, if you like your slashers and you don't mind super gory scenes, you can deal with them. Perhaps if you're used to the Saw films, that is a sign that you may be able to just about manage the Terrifier films. But for me, this is more than just, it was more than a gore fest. There was suspense, tension throughout this entire film experience. I would have actually loved to have seen this at cinema or a theatre rather than just, as I happened to just sort of watch it and stream it. The experience would have been amazing. It's going into a screamer. I thought it was a genuine screamer. And, top tier horror film. As nasty as it was at times, it's going into the top tier. Now, next up we have Superhost from last year. Interesting idea of a film where these two YouTubers go to a sort of holiday home to, to sort of report on it and how their experience is with this kind of weird host who turns out to be, of course, in line with the horror genre and the kind of trope, a complete psychopath. And actually, the actress that plays the psychopath in this, I think, is really good. And she's kind of, for me, she does the unhinged thing really well, because she seems to be kind of all friendly, but you can tell there's that side to her. And I like the way she gets that balance of slightly zany and friendly with that psychopathic side. I think she gets the balance of that character really good. But saying that, I found the film overall pretty disappointing. I'm sad. I'm sorry to say if you love Superhost, but I didn't really think that it was executed terribly well. Wasn't terribly keen on the two main characters, which didn't really help the film much. As I say, I liked the actress's name is Grace Phipps. I really liked her performance a lot. But apart from that, didn't think this was a particularly good film. Not terribly well executed. Story was kind of lacking, not terribly original, despite the kind of modern day kind of whole kind of social media spin on this. I still didn't think it was a great film. Next up, we have Black Phone, which is a very good film. Really good child actor performance in this film. I thought carried this movie really well. Good story too. I struggled a bit with Ethan Hawke, just as because I've seen him in so many films where he's a good guy. I struggled with him in this film as this really horrible psychopathic grabber, a child abductor person. But it was a very good film. For me, the pacing I struggled a bit with. It didn't keep me on the edge of my seat quite enough for my liking for a horror film, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really intelligent film. So it's going into a treat tier. Next up, we got Shallows, starring Blake Lively, a shark-themed film. One of the better shark-themed films I've seen in recent times, I would say. And yeah, kind of felt this was more of a survival-focused film than actually on the shark itself. That was somewhat where the film did draw its strengths. Good performance from Blake Lively. But, I don't know, there were times... I thought the film wasted a lot of time in the beginning with all that surfing stuff. I was like, I'm not here to watch surfing really very much. I'd rather see the film kind of get into its sort of more compelling scenes. But yeah, it was a pretty decent film for a shark film. It's going into the spooky tier. Next up, we've got the film Men. I found this kind of a bizarre film. I like Alex Garland as a director a lot, and I did think this was quite decent. Good performance from Jessie Buckley, an actress I really like. And it sort of, had a message I felt to convey, which at times it felt like it was getting there with it, but the film was so kind of overtly weird. I struggled a bit with it sort of... to enjoy it, I think, which is kind of unusual for me. I like weird films, but this one was so overtly weird, so strange. I struggled with it, with its impact, I think. But, interesting ideas here, good performances, and one or two scenes I thought were pretty memorable, actually, when Jessie Buckley's character, I've forgotten her name already, is sort of doing these vocal, makes these kind of... she sings into a tunnel and you get this kind of harmony of her echoing voice, and it's just really interesting. But yeah, overall, I'm still going to put it into the spooky tier. I thought it was good enough to kind of be an okay film. But yeah, it was, I found it a little bit tricky to follow. Next up, we've got the film X, starring Mia Goth, directed by Ty West. And, another pretty weird film that starts for the most kind of the first half of the film is kind of like a kind of seedy 70s adult film type thing. As they're going, it's kind of set, I think, in that period. And these characters are all sort of filming these adult scenes, but the film develops into a horror film. Kind of takes a bit of time, but it develops into a horror film as they're kind of the elderly couple living with them in where they're filming these scenes are obviously have some pretty nasty intentions. But I actually like this film quite a bit, and I'll say why. Not because of its adult scenes as such. I liked this film because I thought the horror scenes were done really well, and some really interesting ways that they filmed those moments as well, those particular scenes. I guess I won't give away the sort of what those scenes specifically were. I would recommend this film. It is a good film. It did have me, interested. It took a while to get into it, as I say, all those kind of adult scene bits at the start, which you may either love or hate. But I mean, I thought once this film got into its stride, it was a very good film. I'm going to put that on at the kind of lower end of the treat tier. Last but not least, we have Happy Death Day, starring Jessica Roth. And this is a really good film. This is a horror comedy where the main character, she gets killed on the night of her birthday, and she has to relive her death again and again. What I really liked, my favourite moments from this were where sort of the scenes where she's waking up and talking to this character called Carter, and their exchange is slightly different each time she wakes up from her most recent death. And there are little subtle differences in the way she reacts each time, or the way she wakes up and deals with Carter. But it's the way the character that's waiting behind the door comes into the scene that is particularly funny, I think, and really well done. And this is a good horror comedy. I think this is going to be another one that I'm going to put into the treat tier. Perhaps at the top of that tier, I think I'd actually put Black Phone at top of the tree. I think that was a really good film. I'm almost tempted to change my mind and put Black Phone into a screamer, despite my slight issues with pacing. Last minute change of mind. And then there you go. That looks a bit more even, doesn't it? We've got at least one. I like to put at least one film into each tier. So that's it. That's the end of the tier list. Hope you enjoyed this. And I will be doing another one of these at some point. Maybe I'll do a sort of winter type horror films tier list, or one sooner than that. It doesn't have to be seasonal, I guess. I'll just do these as and when I see enough horror films to put them into a tier list. Thanks very much, guys, as always, for watching, following the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that business. I should say like and survive, as per Superhost. Otherwise, from me, take care, everybody. Until next time, bye for now.